Good afternoon, colleagues, distinguished guests, Professor Singh's family. In fact, I should be greeting in all languages, Singh, it is a Heritage Month. So, Lochani, which is isiNdebele, Molweni, isiXhosa, Sanbonani, isiZulu, and Siswati, Dumelang, Sipedi, Sesotho, and Setswana, Absheni, Xitsonga, Nda, Chivenda, hello, and hello in Afrikaans, but really good afternoon. It really gives me a lot of pleasure today to be standing in front of you, welcoming a new professor in the fold. Most of you would know that we are in a Heritage Month, so it is even more special. I wish I knew a number of other Indian greetings. I would have used them. But welcome to the family of Professor Shenuka Singh. I would like to pass greetings and apologies from our Vice Chancellor and Principal, Professor Nana Poku, who extends his sincere apologies for being unavailable today. He conveys his congratulations to Professor Shenuka Singh and his regards to Professor Gavenda's well-wishers in attendance today. It's my honor to welcome our esteemed guests, members of executive who may be here, members of Senate, our inaugural this afternoon, Professor Shenuka Singh, who we extend our heartfelt congratulations to her on this achievement, family, colleagues, friends, and colleagues from other various universities in South Africa and in other parts of the world, such as India, Seychelles, Lesotho, because we know Prof. Singh has been working closely with those collaborators. We welcome all of you, and most importantly, of course, Professor Shenuka Singh, our staff, students, and alumni, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Inaugural lectures form part of the university's public lecture series and may only be presented by newly appointed professors in academic schools and centers. It is often looked at as a rite of passage. These lectures present an opportunity for showcasing the exciting and groundbreaking research and teaching being carried out by professors in our university. And it's a significant milestone in an academic's career, providing official recognition of their promotion or appointment to full professorship. We do not give it to associate professorship. This opportunity is only given to full professorship, which we really view as an epitome of one's career in academia. These lectures are furthermore an ideal opportunity for new professors to introduce themselves and to present an overview of their own contribution to their field of academic peers, students, and research collaborators. Inaugural lectures are also a platform for celebrating a professor's academic achievements with her family or friends and mentors and colleagues. I know you've seen her working very hard. You've often wondered what she's doing, and today really you are going to have a glimpse into this life that she has been living behind the scenes. So this is unprecedented time in our history, and our worldwide network of healthcare and professional interactions is no longer exclusively in the hands of formal structures or incidental learning. The world upon us requires permanent upskilling approaches for better connect, combine, and recognize learning in all forms. The College of Health Sciences salutes Professor Singh for her contribution in moving us forward as a College of Health Sciences and as the University of KwaZulu-Natal. My appreciation once more for joining us. I look forward to Professor Singh's presentation. It's now my pleasure to hand over to my colleague, Professor Percy Mashige, who is the Dean and Head of School, the School of Health Sciences, where Professor Singh is based, who will now introduce the inaugurant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Busingama, and good afternoon, family, colleagues, and all who are joining us online. Professor Shenuka Singh has a bachelor's degree in oral hygiene obtained from the University of Durban, Westville, followed by a master's degree, MSc in dentistry, and then the first PhD in the area of dental public health from the University of the Western Cape. These postgraduate degrees were obtained while she was employed in the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Health. She was formally appointed as a full-time member of the discipline of dentistry at UKZN in November 2009, where she started off as a lecturer. She was subsequently promoted to senior lecturer in 2014, associate professor in 2017, and full professor in 2022. Her commitment to lifelong learning is reflected by the fact that she went on to obtain a postgraduate diploma in health research ethics, cum laude, from Stellenbosch University, and then a second PhD in clinical and health research ethics from the same university in 2020. She is the academic leader for teaching and learning in the School of Health Sciences and the deputy chair of the Biomedical Research Ethics Committee at UKZN. At a national level, Professor Singh is an appointed member of the National Health Research Ethics Council in South Africa, which is a ministerial appointment, and she chairs the Norms and Standards Committee within that committee. A portfolio at this level involves the development and facilitation of national guidelines related to research ethics in the country. She is also a member of the Human Science Research Council Ethics Committee. From an international perspective, she was invited to be part of the World Health Organization Joint Expert Working Group in the Regulation and Safety Unit and the Health Ethics of Government Unit to develop a tool for the benchmarking of research ethics oversight in 2021. She is also appointed as a distinguished adjunct at Savitha Dental College in Chennai, India, from 2018 to date. From a teaching and learning perspective, she was responsible for the recruitment and facilitation of upgrading the skills of 19 students from Seychelles into the dental therapy program at UKZN. Her past leadership roles include being appointed Research Ethics Chair for the Council for Science and Industry Research in South Africa and the Humanities and Social Science Research Ethics Committee at the University of KwaZulu-Natal from 2014 to 2018. She was academic leader for the discipline of dentistry from 2012 to 2016 and acting dean of teaching and learning in the College of Health Sciences in 2016. From a university service perspective, she sat on a number of committees at UKZN over years, being a member of Senate, College Academic Affairs Board, College Management Committee, the UKZN Academic Exclusion Appeals Committee, the University-wide Teaching and Learning Strategy Group, and the Research Strategy Group. She also sat on various committees at the school level, as well as the KZN DOH UKZN College of Health Science Steering Committee in the past. Professor Singh is also a prolific researcher, having published 59 journal articles and 5 book chapters. She successfully supervised 8 doctoral and 8 master's graduates, as well as 1 postdoctoral fellow to completion. She presented papers at various national and international conferences, including invitations as keynote speaker. She has been appointed as an external examiner for the undergraduate training program, as well as a master's and doctoral thesis examination. Professor Singh has also, over the years, been involved in various training programs aimed at staff development, most notably in the development of the teaching portfolio. From a staff capacity development perspective, she has been a presenter and facilitator in workshops related to research ethics and research integrity at various universities such as Durban University of Technology, Tshwane University of Technology, University of Zululand, Northwest University, and institutions such as the South African Medical Research Council and Human Science Research Council. She was appointed chair of the Accreditation Committee for the Review of the Dental Program in Lesotho in 2015 and 2018, and was appointed as an international expert by the Namibian Health Professions Council to review the newly created Bachelor of Dental Surgery program in that country. She was appointed as chair of the external review of the major in Criminology and Forensic Study, School of Applied Sciences by the DVC for Humanities at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in August 2018. At a national level, she also conducted various reviews for the Council for Higher Education and for the National Research Foundation in South Africa over the years. Professor Singh was a recipient of the 2018 College of Health Science Teaching Excellence Award in the category Outstanding Contribution to Teaching, and was also awarded the UKZN Certificate of Excellence in Teaching. She presented the first IADR SA webinar entitled Ethics in Dental Research, a toolkit for researchers, students, and research supervisors in May 2021. I welcome you in joining Professor Singh in her inaugural lecture. Thank you.
Good afternoon to you. I greet you with an opening prayer in Sanskrit. Om Triambagam Yajanmahe, Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam, Ulvarukam Vabandhanan, Mitriyo Mokshyam Mamratat. Warm greetings and salutations to the Vice Chancellor, Professor Nana Poku, the Deputy Vice Chancellor for the College of Health Sciences, Professor Busi Ngama, the Dean and the Head of School for the School of Health Sciences, Professor Percy Mashike, the Registrar, Dr. Kathy Cleland, my family members, friends, colleagues, alumni, and students. Thank you so much for attending this inaugural lecture. So my development as an academic at UKZN has been punctuated by my triad of interests, namely in dental research, from where I developed an interest in research ethics, and then the application of research to the area of teaching and learning. This journey was articulated by my second PhD, where I explored the scholarship of teaching and learning to develop an online training course on the ethical, legal, and social implications of biobanking in South Africa using a participatory action research approach. This work was co-supervised by Professor Kimentri Mudli from Stellenbosch University and Professor Jean Cadogan from the University of North Carolina. So given that I engage in different spheres of research through a multidisciplinary approach, my presentation this afternoon also focuses on bringing two domains together, namely that of research ethics and teaching and learning. And I hereby highlight the need for a paradigm shift in our understanding and thinking of research ethics and the need to contextualize research practices within an African context, while at the same time looking at learning approaches in research ethics that recognizes the role of interactive learning, where diversity in student needs and experiences are explored within the learning context. Thus, this presentation is structured as follows. I will focus on the current aspects of research ethics, and I will focus specifically on research that involves human participants and their data. I will then look at the need for transformation in research ethics, the need for humanized pedagogy, I will suggest a way forward. And lastly, I would like to express and highlight my gratitude and acknowledgement to the various individuals who contributed to my academic development. I am also cognizant that the audience today is diverse. Hence, I pitched the presentation at a level that will allow for easy understanding and coherence in the arguments presented. For this, I will first present a brief overview of research ethics. So research is underpinned by the need to ensure that the proposed study has benefits, that any associated or foreseeable risks are identified, and that measures are put in place to mitigate these risks, that research participants are able to make an independent decision on whether or not to participate in research, and that there is justice in how study participants are selected. So this is an overview of the researcher's ethical obligations. Again, looking at the benefits of the study to ensure that if there's any risks that there are measures put in place to mitigate these, that there is justice in the selection of study participants, there is autonomy in the decision-making processes, that at all times the dignity of participants are upheld, and that their privacy is also maintained, specifically not just when the data is being collected, but what happens to that collected information. How is it stored? What security measures are put in place? And who will have access to this data? Also important to look at confidentiality in terms of the disclosure of the collected information, and to make sure that at all times the rights of the research participant is being upheld. So for this, researchers need to show competence as well as integrity in terms of understanding what is expected of the research process. And for this, there has got to be honesty on the part of the researchers and responsibility. Now, when I talk about responsibility, I'm not just referring to responsibilities towards the research participants, but also responsibility to ensure that there's accuracy, firstly, in how the data is being collected, secondly, in how the data is being analyzed, and thirdly, how the data is being reported. So these principles and standards essentially highlight what is required to optimize ethical practice and integrity in research. However, when we look at the obligations of the researcher, the focus appears to be on virtue ethics, that is character-based ethics. This means that a person who is honest, fair, and good should not be engaging in research misconduct. Yet we do know that sometimes good researchers with good attributes and good characters engage in questionable research behavior. Secondly, ethics is not first learned at university, but rather cultivated and nurtured in the home environment. Researchers' attitudes and worldviews on research would be influenced by their social upbringing and shaped by the cultural and religious belief systems. Thus, researchers, students, and research supervisors come into the research environment with preconceived perceptions and attitudes that will ultimately impact on their research behaviors. So while these principles and standards in research ethics have largely emerged against a backdrop of a global response to past exploitative practices against individuals and communities where the rights and interests of the affected people were not upheld. So some examples of this would be the Nazi experiments that were done on people in concentration camps during World War II, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, to name a few. But there is a growing body of literature that also highlights the limitations of some of these identified standards and their applicability to the African as well as the current context of research. Now, one such example would be the cultural interpretation of the body. Now, many African cultures and numerous First Nations and indigenous communities across the world have different cultural interpretations of the human body and the transition between the living and the afterlife. The literature shows that blood is considered sacred and is believed to be capable of sustaining a life force outside of the human body. I will use an example to illustrate this. So research participants or donors can provide biological materials such as blood samples to a biobank or to a biorepository for storage and for future use. Now, I'd actually done a study that looked at the implications and the ethical, legal, and social implications of biobanking. So this is a quote that is taken from an interviewee in my study. And it indicates that when people work with the samples, they don't just look at its purpose. They just see it as colorless liquid. And I think that it would be nice to remember that this actually belonged to a human being, and that we are just custodians of the sample, and that we should have respect when we use this. So my study findings highlighted that researchers and technicians working only with the blood sample in the biobank might find it difficult to connect the sample back to the person who provided this material. And this disconnect can be amplified if the researcher or the technician does not subscribe to the same cultural or belief systems as that of the person who provided the biosample. So a key observation in my study was that respondents, and to these I'm referring to researchers, clinicians, biobankers, and research ethics committee members, their understanding and expression of social cultural considerations in biobanking appeared to be influenced by their own belief systems and cultural practices. So this finding is supported by authors such as Aramoana and colleagues, who also noted that Western researchers might struggle to comprehend the link between human biological material and cultural practices. So when we apply this to research in general, this means that although researchers and other stakeholders might be seen as caring and acting in the best interests of individuals and communities, the deeper impact of personal beliefs should not be ignored. This highlights the need for respect to be shown for all cultures, irrespective of the variation in belief systems, and that the preservation of these values and practices should be ensured. Such values include the need for respect, honesty, justice, and fairness, as that articulated in the SAN Code of Research Ethics. At the same time, much of the ethics guidance on research focuses on autonomy, that is, where consent is considered to be valid when an individual makes an independent decision on whether or not to participate in research. Now, relational autonomy shows that individual decision-making is influenced by his or her relationship with other people. Now, when we apply this to the African context, the Ubuntu philosophy illustrates that an individual is identified through the community. Thus, decision-making could be influenced by members of the family, community, or spiritual leaders, and possibly even ancestral spirits. So when we apply this to research ethics, this means that researchers must allow potential participants more time to decide on whether or not to participate in research. And in cases where the study involves the collection of genetic information or biosamples, or where the type of information or data collected could be seen as invasive from a physical, emotional, or psychological perspective, a greater level of engagement is required on the part of researchers. On a broader societal level, there is also a need to consider reciprocity and solidarity in research, that is, acting in the greater interests of society. However, an ethical paradox can arise, where the quest for solidarity in research, that is a quest for the greater common good, unavoidably also limits an individual's right to privacy. Researchers should be aware of these complexities and how to navigate through these very slippery terrains in research. At the same time, researchers need to think of benefit sharing efforts, especially when the research outcomes results in interventions or products that could be of benefit to the community or affected population. Such benefits should be equitably distributed amongst the affected populations. And we are acutely aware of the challenges that occurred with the initial access to COVID-19 vaccines and the stockpiling that occurred within high-income countries. So this is a summary of the issues that I've highlighted thus far that needs to be considered in research ethics deliberations. This is not an exhaustive list, but rather highlights the need for researchers to recognize the context-specific influences on the research process and how this could shape and influence decision-making and engagement in research. All of these issues highlight the need to have a community or stakeholder engagement process where communities become a stakeholder in research as opposed to simply being providers of genetic resources or passive participants. However, the complexities in stakeholder engagement must also be considered in terms of the differing priorities and focal areas within communities and between communities and the researchers. And this is particularly relevant in resource-constrained environments where there could be divergent political and cultural views. There could also be competing interests and possibly power dynamics between funders, researchers, and the community at large. So these highlighted issues point to a very complex research environment, and that upholding participants' rights and dignity is more than simply obtaining individual consent, maintaining privacy and confidentiality. At the same time, the collection and use of big data, such as those, for example, related to your cell phone use, your buying preferences, your health-related data, etc., throws another dimension in ethical considerations in research. Now, some of the ethical issues include things like informed consent, privacy, data sharing, further access to the stored data. The potential for social stigmatization exists, especially where communities or groups of people could be stigmatized or discriminated through biases in the selection of the existing data sets for data analyses. At the same time, it becomes a little bit more difficult to define who exactly are these communities to engage with. So overall, all of these nuances in understanding research ethics decision-making in diverse communities, as well as the complexities in data science research, must be built into the training programs for researchers and other stakeholders involved in the research setting, including research ethics committees. Now, despite this very complex setting for research and the implications for research ethics practice, the current context of research ethics exposure in higher education is characterized by the need for researchers to show evidence of having completed an assessed ethics training course, which is part of the prerequisites for ethical clearance. Now, the challenge is that these available training courses are generic, with a general focus on historical perspectives, principles, and concepts, and mainly those that are imported from Eurocentric settings. There are very few educational research ethics-related courses that are specifically designed for a South African community and context. And where research ethics education occurs, this is mainly content-driven curricula, meaning that the focus is on the information provided and not on the learner's ability to interact with the learning material. So the challenge with this approach is that knowledge acquisition is mainly occurring through these short online courses that I've mentioned, and that this is a once-off event. Yet the challenges with ethical dilemmas in the research process are multifold and could occur at different stages of the research. In my experience as a research ethics reviewer and a past chair of 2 ethics committees, it is not only students who struggle to engage with research ethics, but also research supervisors. And this points to a deeper systemic issue of how research ethics is taught and sustained through the undergraduate and postgraduate training programs. Thus, it is left upon the student to connect the dots. That is, to integrate all of this information. Now, if the goal of postgraduate education, specifically the research component, is for the student to engage with the learning processes to eventually become independent researchers, then this highlighted gap in the learning process cannot be ignored. Yet the focus of the research component appears to be skewed towards the research outputs, that is the publications or the student throughput. All of these issues point out that ethical practice and research integrity are implicit in higher education. That is, there is a presumption that this learning is assumed to be in place because the student has provided a certificate illustrating a completed ethics training course. And this points to dehumanized learning. So dehumanized learning means that learning does not take into account the interactive and heuristic approach to student learning, the role of the student-educator relationship in this learning, the uniqueness of the learning environment, and the specific needs that can occur as a result of the diversity in learning needs. So applied to research ethics, this highlights a gap in the student-educator relationship where the platform for interaction, debates, and discourses remains largely unaddressed. Thus, we are not focusing on how students are learning research ethics, yet we expect compliance in terms of the set standards for ethical practice and research integrity. So one practical way forward would be to move from dehumanized to humanized learning. And this would be through the adoption of a humanist perspective where the emphasis is on student-centered learning, that is, students, their learning experiences, and their relationships. A humanist perspective is underpinned by humanist values such as respect and human dignity. This means that learning must take into account the lived experiences of students, the beliefs and practices, their understanding of research and its purpose, their positioning and role in society, and again, noting that students can be both researchers and the researched. How does these dual roles impact on their own understanding of the research context and their responsibilities in research? Therefore, a human caring pedagogical relationship requires interactions between the educator and the students that are based on mutual respect for the culture and social practices, that this should be authentic, humanist, and based on equity and trust that is intended to nurture the students' educational and professional growth. It is noted that issues of power and hierarchy inadvertently introduces bias in terms of one's own worldviews and belief systems, and to recognize that not just students, but also educators could come from marginalized groups, and that there could be stereotypes and engendered roles that are more likely to create uncertainty in a sense of belongingness. So as a way forward, this calls for multiple learning platforms where students and educators have the opportunities to engage in debates and discourses around research ethics, where there is a co-creation of knowledge and skills that are grounded in real-life experiences, and that all of these are explored. This presentation was not meant to be prescriptive in terms of the processes on how to engage with contextualized research ethics, but rather points out to the need to have dedicated space in the curricula as well as in other learning spaces to start a conversation and to sustain this conversation on this very important yet underexplored and under-researched area. A shared platform for learning and debating research-related ethics issues would contribute to a better understanding of research ethics, ethical practice, and research integrity. So in summary, the presentation highlighted two important streams related to research ethics in higher education: the need to contextualize our understanding of research ethics within the lived experiences as well as the diverse settings, and to recognize how culture, religion, and belief systems could impact research decision-making, both from a researcher perspective as well as a research participant or community perspective. This requires a relook at our own worldviews and how this could impact on our interactions with communities as well as students. Teaching and learning in research ethics needs to be far more explicitly expressed in curricula, not just as added modules or credit points, but rather infused into the general teaching and research supervision processes. Such an approach must be built on pedagogies that highlight the need for sustained interaction between the student, the educator, hence a humanized way of learning. These are my references. I would now like to use this space to express my sincere gratitude and thanks and acknowledge the wonderful people that shaped and influenced my life as an academic. Firstly, I thank God for being my moral compass, for guiding me through every step of this journey. My mom, she instilled in me the value of investing in lifelong education. She has been my rock, the wind beneath my wind, my greatest cheerleader. As a single parent, she raised us under difficult financial circumstances, yet she taught me never to feel sorry for myself. I learned tenacity and I learned resilience, and I am so blessed to do this presentation today in her presence. My sisters, Shenuka and Cookie. I first learned to read through my sister Shenuka, who used to read to us when I was a little child. She introduced me to the classic authors such as Charles Dickens, Thomas Hardy, and I started reading these books while I was still in primary school. I also want to acknowledge the family tree, the host of family members that stood by us through our highs and lows, the joys and sorrows, and everything in between. To Karan, Ranjit, Anila, Anibai, my sisters-in-law, Anusha, Ramila, Shakila, together with my niece Virusha, our family member Pendile, and Auntie Sally. Thank you so much for being here in person with me to share this moment with both my mom, my sister. To my other family members, your love and support and online presence is deeply appreciated. And this includes my sister, Jackie in Colombia. To my heavenly angels, my niece Renusha, it was her experiences in being exposed to experimental drugs in her cancer therapies that years later perked my interest in research ethics. My uncle Krish, who taught me that generosity meant not asking for anything in return, not even divine blessings for these actions. My aunt Kosila, who was a second mother to me. My big brother and cousin Roy, who accompanied me on all my adventures during my postgraduate studies, and for being present at my 3 graduations before his untimely demise. My school environment, Northmead Secondary. The school played a huge role in my early development, and I thank the educators listed on the slide, as well as my friends, some of whom I've retained a relationship over all of these years. Malini, Shamila, Saris, Indira. I also want to acknowledge Mrs. Pavi Govindsamy and Mr. Ben Chetty, who recognized my leadership skills very early on and who nurtured and guided me through my high school years. For my tertiary education, I want to acknowledge the institutions where I obtained my qualifications. At the University of Durban, Westville, special thanks go to Ms. Ruby Nair, Professor Jairam Reddy, for all the support that you have given me. At the University of the Western Cape, to my two supervisors for my first PhD, Professor Neil Myberg, Professor Rachilal Lalu. Thank you for all your support. I also want to acknowledge the late Professor Muller, who gave me the opportunity to enroll in postgraduate studies when there were no opportunities available in KZN. And a special thanks to Professor Myberg for guiding me on how to be a better human. I am so honored and privileged today to have 3 deans from the Faculty of Dentistry attending this presentation. And these are the current dean, Professor Yengopal, and the 2 former deans, Professor Myberg and Professor Yusuf Osman. This is indeed absolutely special to me. From the University of Stellenbosch, I want to thank my supervisor, Professor Kimentri Mudli, for opening new doors for me in the field of ethics and biobanking. Her leadership and visionary outlook makes her a sought-after role model and expert in bioethics, and I am so privileged to have been under her tutelage. I also want to acknowledge the KZN Department of Health, and in particular, Dr. Akbar, for the role he played in my early development as an academic. I also want to thank the communities of KwaMashu, Inanda, and Indwetwe, from where I learned firsthand the inequalities in health and healthcare. And I brought this rich real-world experience into my teaching. My academic growth occurred because of leaders such as those listed on the slide, who selflessly shared their expertise and provided support for my growth. My journey into leadership was propelled by Professor Isaac, the former dean and head of school in the School of Health Sciences. Her belief and confidence in my abilities allowed me to soar as an academic. My growth in research ethics was nurtured and supported by Professors Doug Wassenaar and Urmila Bob. And it was Professor Wassenaar who encouraged me to enroll for postgraduate studies in research ethics. To my dental family, the discipline of dentistry, we have come a long way. And every single person in the discipline has achieved some milestone since joining UKZN. Thank you for all your support over the years, for celebrating my success, and for being the ones I can count on. Thank you, Dr. Zilana Mudli, Mogi Reddy, and Rajeshri Mudli for being here in person. Ilana and Mogi, apart from being colleagues, you are also my graduates, and I am so proud of your achievements. A special word of acknowledgement to Mrs. Saloshni Pillay for your unwavering support over all of these years. And I also want to acknowledge my friends and colleagues in the various sectors whom I'm so privileged to have been associated with. From a dentistry perspective, I want to acknowledge my collaborators in research, as well as the wonderful team in the Department of Oral Hygiene at UWC. To the Dental Therapy Association, the Oral Hygiene Association, the South African Dental Association, thank you for all of those opportunities that you provided to me to present at your conferences and congresses. To Dr. Ramesh Inderman, whom I worked with in private practice for many years, thank you for all your support. To the International Association of Dental Research South African Division, Professors Santika Khan, Manogri Chetty, Amit Bayat, and our very own Rajeshri Mudli, who represents UKZN, and the entire EXCO team. Thank you. I learned so much from you. To the Global Division of IADR, thank you for your confidence in appointing me as a committee member for ethics in oral health research. To Savitha Dental College, as well as Dr. Arun from the Chennai Dental Association, thank you for your association and for your continued support. From a research ethics perspective, big thanks goes to the Biomedical Research Ethics Committee, the Humanities and Social Sciences Research Ethics Committee, the Research Office, and specifically going to Mariette Snyman, Anusha Marimatu, Job, as well as the late Mr. Prem Mohan. Thank you for all your support to the chairs, as well as Professor Doug Wassenaar, Professor Beamer. Thank you for all your support. At the national level, the National Health Research Ethics Council, thank you for allowing me to be part of such an awesome team. To the research ethics committees at the Council for Science and Industry Research, as well as the Human Science Research Council, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you. To the SAMRC, special thanks go to Dr. Seiso Kowali for all your support and for including me in your ethics training programs. To the Center for Medical Ethics and Law at Stellenbosch University, Professor Moodley, Professor Rennie Stewart, Dr. Emmanuel Obasa, Dr. Lulu Nair, the PhD students, my sister Teresa, my brother Francis. Thank you for all your support and for this opportunity to be part of the research ethics family. Thank you, Prof. Moodley, for including me in your projects, such as the ERISA project and the REDSA project. It is truly an honor to be part of an African bioethics consortium of this stature. To the World Health Organization, Dr. Andreas and the team, thank you so much for your confidence in making me part of the expert group. And thank you for being online as well today. To the Sereti team, Professor Anne Strode, Dr. Zainab Issa, Carla, Mandy, and the master students, many of whom are present today. It's been an absolute pleasure to interact and learn with you. From a teaching and learning perspective, thank you to the School of Health Sciences, to the College Dean, Professor Duma, in the area of teaching and learning, to the University Teaching and Learning Office. Special thanks again goes to Professor Robbie Dunpat for all your support over the years, the QPA office, and my Tau 4, the Teaching and Advancements at Universities, as well as the Women in Leadership programs. Words are not enough to express my heartfelt thank you to you who turned out in such great numbers to attend this presentation. We only met this year, yet we have already forged a bond for life. Thank you, Profs. Denise, Birgit, Jeff, Helen, for all your support as well. To Mrs. Marilyn Lucas from Seychelles, thank you for your coordination of the dental therapy program in Seychelles. I could not have done this without you, and I am so glad to call you my dear friend. To the DT graduates, the dental therapy graduates, you have triumphed over your challenges and you have proven your resilience, and I am so proud of your achievement. You will all always occupy a very special place in my heart. And to the Council of Higher Education, both in South Africa as well as in Lesotho, thank you for the confidence that you've placed in me. To the College of Health Sciences, the deans in the School of Health Sciences, the DVCs, both Professor Ngama as well as Professor Slotto, thank you for all your support. To the School of Health Sciences, Mr. Vishnu Govender, the academic leaders, the academic and support staff, as well as Mr. Sahil Govender, Mr. Sahil Sankar, my apologies. Thank you for everything that you have done for me. Thank you to the UKZN audiovisual team at UTEL, Sandhya, Pamela, and the team at the Registrar's Office as well. And to you, the alumni, my students, I stand here because of you. Your success paved the way for my success. This is our shared platform, and this means so much to me to have you here both in person and virtually. And finally, I want to acknowledge my audience, both the in-person and the people sitting in the room. And I'd like to call upon my mom to share this moment with me. I want to thank you for your support, your well wishes, and words of encouragement. An inaugural lecture is the highlight of an academic's career. And today, you shine the light on this high moment for me. And everybody, this is my mom.
God bless you.
Thank you. And I hand over back to the DVC.
Thank you. Can you please give another round of applause? Really, I am so moved. This was such an inspiring inaugural lecture from a wonderful human being. Those that have had an opportunity to work with her, interact with her in passages, we can all attest to her not just being an academic and a scholar, but also a wonderful human being. I think that's probably why she got attracted to studying ethics and really beginning to look at this topic of humanizing education and contextualizing the ethics in everything that we do as an institution. As I said, I'm so moved. This was great. And I know it's very difficult to put one's career of how many years, over 20 years, into one lecture. This must have been the most difficult thing to do, but you've really done it so well. And I'm really encouraged by how you've gone about thanking everyone that has had a hand in your success, because it's true, we stand on other people's shoulders. Yeah. So you never make it on your own, and you make it because other people are there for you. They support you in many different ways. Even if someone says during your moment of frustration, how are you? How is your writing coming on? But we really want to thank you all for coming, and a special thanks to the mom. We've seen that you share a special bond. We really are very appreciative of having allowed her to come to the university, and we also get to share, her with you and the family. On behalf of the College of Health Sciences, it really is my honor to deliver now the vote of thanks. I would like to begin by thanking each and every colleague, student, friend, family, professors. I had their deans and everybody that has had a hand in the career of Professor Singh. And I just want to thank you all for attending today. We acknowledge the contribution of the important people who have supported her in her journey, most especially her mom, Mrs. Prewamti Basharti, her sister Shenuka, her brothers and her sisters-in-law. As a university, we really value the role of loved ones who continue to support our respected staff who are making significant strides in progressing our university. Thank you also to the university executive management, our deans and heads of schools, members of Senate, staff, students and alumni, and distinguished guests. And finally, and most importantly, congratulations once more, Professor Singh, on behalf of the College of Health Science. Like I said, you've kept up with our motto, which is inspiring greatness. You have been inspiring greatness, and I hope you continue to shine. You are young, you still have a lot to achieve in academia, and continue to inspire others, especially your students and your colleagues. Colleagues, with these few words, I just want to thank all of you for joining us today in supporting and congratulating Professor Singh and drawing this lecture to a close. And I wish you a pleasant afternoon. Thank you. Thank you.